You're listening to 1460, the new WXBR. Peter Czymbor here with you on this Monday morning. Joining me right now via the telephone is a member of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as the drummer for the legendary punk band, the Ramones. And this Friday, he'll be performing at the Paradise Rock Club in Boston with his band Blitzkrieg, featuring Andrew W.K. on vocals. We're very pleased to have with us via the telephone the legendary Marky Ramone. Marky, good morning and welcome to the program.
Hey, how are you?
I am doing well. Marky, tell us about this project Blitzkrieg and tell us how the partnership came with Andrew W.K. participating in this tour as the vocalist.
Okay, we decided to do 35 classic Ramones songs, and Andrew puts his own style to it, and we met in New York, and he was suggested by a friend. I gave him the set list, and he did it just perfectly, and I was really amazed of his style. So we got together for a few rehearsals, and recently we've played 12 countries together. And he's been DJing on the Black Sabbath tour, and I just got back from Rock in Rio. So now we're going to get together again, rehearse some more, and start this tour of the States.
This guy, Andrew W.K., has been linked to some legendary bands as of late. You mentioned he's been touring with Black Sabbath, probably the foremost heavy metal band in the history of that particular genre, who recently went into the Hall of Fame, and now performing with you and doing Ramones tunes. He's a guy that is somewhat of a renaissance man.
Yeah, he's a jack of all trades, and I like his party philosophy. And he's just a good-time guy, very positive, and he likes to engage the fans and friends in the audience, and I find that very cool to have him do that.
He is so overwhelmingly positive in his attitude towards everything. I don't know what he's on, but whatever he is on, I'm curious. That's all I'm going to say about that.
I think he's on air. I don't think he needs anything to be self-induced to get off. He's just naturally a positive guy. There's a lot of negativity in the world, and I think it's a good thing to have someone like that. You bring a smile to someone's face,
Andrew,
so that's why when we tour together, I find myself smiling even more too,
Andrew W.K., high on life, and we can all take a page out of his book, I think, moving forward. Marky, you are doing about 30 Ramones tunes, you said, on this tour with Blitzkrieg and Andrew
A little
W.K.
more, yeah.
A little more. You are the last link to the Ramones in that late 70s punk scene. Does it amaze you that all these years later, there's still a lot of kids these days discovering that band, discovering those songs, and you see people of all ages wearing those Ramone T-shirts and listening to punk rock?
It's probably the lyrical content, the energy of the songs, the image. So I guess every generation sees something in us that they can relate to, and that's very important. That's what perpetuates the band's presence to this day. So I'm grateful. Tommy's grateful, and it never stops, and we're very happy for that.
Those songs that the Ramones recorded back in the 70s are seen today as timeless songs. However, not being around in the late 70s myself, what was the vibe like in the late 70s? Did you think that this would still be something that would be around all these years later? Or was the kind of general feeling amongst maybe outsiders was that this was a trend that was going to come and go, this whole punk rock thing?
Well, I joined in 78. I was already in a punk band called the Voidoids in 76, 77 in New York. We, in the late 70s, 78, 79, we had no idea of the influence that this band has had around the world, including England and Los Angeles. We see it today. Time gives you that chance so you can reflect. So I see it, and it's just amazing that when we were a band, I never thought that it would get to this point. And when Johnny and Joey and Dee Dee were alive, they were very amazed too. I mean, at least they were alive to see the influences they made on other bands, fashion, other train of thought, just the genre of music that the Sex Pistols picked up, the Clash, Green Day, Offspring, Rancid, all these groups, so many groups. I mean, from different genres, Pearl Jam, even Offspring, just so many bands that liked the Ramones. And Lemmy from Motorhead wrote a song about us called Ramones. And when we heard that, we were like stunned. We go, wow, Lemmy wrote this for us. We were really amazed, you know.
Every time I've ever been to the Rainbow in Los Angeles, I've bumped into Lemmy.
Oh, yeah. He's a permanent fixture there when he's not touring. And he lives up the block. But he's a great guy, and, he's still kicking. That's good.
Once again, we're chatting with Marky Ramone here on WXBR. You are a member. Let's talk about your history with the Ramones real quick, because you mentioned that there was a drummer preceding you in the Ramones. You had a significant contribution to the band. You were in the band for 15 years and is a member of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as a result. How did your entry into the Ramones come about, and what happened to the original drummer? Why did he leave the band?
Well, Tommy was in the band for 3 years. They all knew each other and started the group. He didn't want to tour anymore, and he just wanted to produce. So Dee Dee Ramone asked me to join the band at a club in New York City called Max's Kansas City, and it was that simple. Dee Dee and the other Ramones used to come see my band Dust play in the city, which was the first band I ever had, and we all kind of knew each other because we all hung out in the same place. So when Tommy left, Tommy suggested also that they get me in the group, and John and Joey understood what he meant, because he also played a little drums, and he said that my drumming would be perfect for the group. So that was very nice of him. And then we got together. They gave me the live show on a tape, and the first album I recorded with them, Road to Ruin, where the first song I recorded with them was I Want to Be Sedated. So it was that simple, and everything fell in, and I did 1,700 shows with the band.
Now, 30 years following your initial entry into the band, performing with Blitzkrieg and Andrew WK, what is the similarities and differences performing these songs nowadays with these core of guys as opposed to the original Ramones back in the late 70s and during the 15 years you were a member of that band?
Well, the music's the same. The energy is the same. The vocals obviously are different. We keep up the 1, 2, 3, 4. There's hardly any stops between the songs. And we play a little longer than the Ramones did on stage. I think the Ramones, we only did about maybe 28, 29 songs, including the encore. We do about 35. So we're playing an extra, I guess, 10, 15 minutes. So that's really the difference. And we don't rely on any effects. We just go out there and play. I don't feel we need that. So that's what you get, is a bunch of energy rush that is, in my opinion, critical to have a great, energetic night.
Blitzkrieg featuring Marky Ramone and Andrew WK playing at the Paradise Rock Club in Boston this Friday. We're chatting with Marky Ramone. What are some of your best memories during your 15 years playing with Ramones, playing shows both a small scale in little clubs and on a large scale, i.e. festivals and whatnot?
Well, it all varied. You learn from every place you play, the different sizes, clubs, venues, festivals, stadiums, whatever. You learn how to accept the crowds, the differences in the crowds, and then you know exactly what you're confronting. In a small club, you're a lot closer to your fans and friends. So it's a little more intimate. A larger place, you can't be that intimate. But what I learned is you have to play the same with the same energy as you would in front of, say, 800 people compared to 50, 60,000 people. That's a band who will go places because they believe in the music, and that the crowd can be one person as long as you play like you're playing in front of thousands. So the best memories that I have is, I guess, entering into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, being on The Simpsons, making Rock and Roll High School, or working with Phil Spector, getting the Grammy Award recently, and it never ends. I mean, there's so many things that were awarded to us that it's just a thing that I'm so grateful for, that they acknowledged us, and that was important. When we got into the Hall of Fame, we represented our genre of music, which is punk rock. So when we got in there, we brought all of our fans and all the bands that tour with Vans, and people who really were considered outcasts in life, and we brought them with us when we ended up in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Now, you mentioned earlier a lot of bands that have cited the Ramones as being an influence, a la Green Day, The Offspring, Rancid.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of those bands became prominent, I think, around the year 1994. That's when Green Day's Dookie album and the first Offspring album came out and really exploded on the national scene. Sort of a second wave of punk rock. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. I want to make sure I have my timeline in order here. Was the Ramones' last tour mid-'90s Lollapalooza, or am I mistaken?
I was 96. Yeah, you're right.
96. Now, after those bands exploded, and then another wave of bands came through that were influenced by those bands that also cited the Ramones as influences, bands, say, like Blink-182 and bands within that genre, Newfound Glory. Was there ever any consideration between you and the then surviving members of the Ramones to go out and do it one more time, or was Lollapalooza just a farewell, that's it?
Well, it would have been nice if we had, because we've been doing so many shows in the 22 years when we decided to retire in 96. Unfortunately, a couple of years, I think a year or two later, Joey got cancer. So that one wouldn't have been a possibility. But if they didn't get the cancer, John and Joey, and if Dee Dee was able to do it again too, who knows? Maybe if we had a 3-4 year rest, we would have said, "Hey, let's get back together again." We had enough time off, and let's see what goes on. But we retired at the top of our game. We were still really, really, really good. And you look back, and I remember the meeting that me, Joey, and Johnny had in a hotel room. We said, this is when we're going to decide to retire, and it would be 1996. And that was 1994. So we had it all planned. And a reunion, that might have been. I mean, there's reunions of bands with one member in it, and they keep the name, and you don't even see the original members anymore. So if Johnny, Joey, and Dee Dee were alive, and I was playing with them, or Tommy, that would be the Ramones.
You mentioned earlier the core of bands that you guys are most closely associated with from that punk rock late 70s era, The Clash and the Sex Pistols. The Clash, of course, Joe Strummer passed away about a decade ago. The Sex Pistols still do tour. What members do remain of that group? What's your relationship with members of those bands that are still alive?
Well, I did a tour with The Clash with the Voidoids in 1977. We were all friends. We all hung out together, me, Paul Simonon, and Mick Jones, Joe Strummer, Topper, and then we came back to the States, and Richard didn't want to tour anymore. And then I hung out in CBGB's, and that's when Sid moved to New York, and I became friends with him before he offed himself with Nancy. And unfortunately, and I'm very friendly with Debbie Harry, Glenn Matlock from the Sex Pistols, who I feel is the main contributor of the band because he wrote all those songs. And, I mean, we all run into each other. I'm friends with the guys from Rancid. I'm friends with the guys, let's see, who else? Oh, boy, you name it. Some guys from Black Flag. So it really, there's a lot of people that I do know, but you run into each other, or, somebody could be touring. So you really don't plan the situation. You run into people. If I'm going to L.A., I'll contact somebody, and maybe they'll be there, maybe they won't, But, you give it a shot.
Outside of bands that you've been a part of, what are some of the favorite bands that you've played with from time to time? I saw that you recently did a show with Fall Out Boy in your hometown of New York.
Well, they called me. They wanted me to do 2 songs, and then they wanted to do 2 Ramones songs, and I said, sure, why not? You know, I mean, that was a cool thing. They're nice guys. We met in Rockaway when Sandy hit Rockaway Beach, and we helped clean it up, and we supplied food for a lot of people there. So we said, hey, you know, if you're around, we're playing the Barclays Center in Brooklyn. Would you like to do 2 songs with us? I said, sure. So then I did, and then Offspring at Rock in Rio about a week ago asked me to play with them 2 songs, and I did. That was a lot of fun because my band was playing too. So I also played with this oldies band, the Benches. We did Wipeout together, and that was really cool because they're an instrumental band. And I remember as a little kid hearing that song and loving it. You know, so you know you play with different people, but the best band I was in that I liked was the first band that I was in called Dust and the Ramones.
Now, earlier you mentioned CBGB's, the legendary New York punk rock club that the Ramones emanated from. This Friday, playing the Paradise Rock Club in Boston, a club that has been around for many, many years in Boston. A lot of legendary acts have passed through there. What are some of your favorite Boston memories or New England memories, and what venues stand out to you in this area?
Wow. I guess the Rat, right?
The now defunct Rat?
Yep. Me, Dee Dee, and a lot of friends would go there, you know, after passing through. We'd go there, hang out, and have a few beers. And it's unfortunate that a lot of these clubs closed, or, you know, I mean, a club's life is usually 10 to 15 years. But CBGB's was about 36 years, and Max's Kansas City was about 20 years. So you never know, you know what I mean? Clubs come and clubs go, but it's up to bands to form their own new club and form their own new scene, like the Rat in Boston and all these clubs like Max's Kansas City, the Whiskey A Go-Go in L.A. So, I mean, Boston was a great place for the Ramones.
Now, you mentioned earlier that one of your career highlights was working with producer Phil Spector, who at the time you guys worked with him was one of the most prominent producers in the music business. What do you think of the recent HBO movie about his life, if you in fact saw it?
I remained friends with Phil since he did the album with us in 1979 until he went away. I thought Al Pacino did a decent job. A little too much Al and not enough Phil, but, you know, you're an actor, so you got to put some of your personality into it also. But I thought he did a good job. Phil was a very unusual, egomaniacal guy, but he was the greatest at what he did, and it's been proven in these songs that he produced. Me and Joey loved him. He didn't like Johnny or Dee Dee, but he liked me and Joey. Who you figure out, you can't understand why, but that some people are attracted, some people aren't. So we managed to do an album with him, and that was our largest selling album. And I used to go to his Christmas parties and hang out with him and other musicians that were on his recordings. And I was with him in court when he was on trial for the killing of Alana Clarkson. So that's my, memory of Phil. He'll always be my friend, whether he's guilty or not. I still think he isn't, but that's not for me to argue with the justice system.
Do you still keep in touch with him while he's in jail?
Well, we write, and in order to see somebody in that kind of position where he is, it's 2.5 hours out of Los Angeles. So it would be pretty hard for me to visit, but I'm going to make time when I go there again to see him.
We're chatting with Marky Ramone here on WXBR. The everlasting memory of the Ramones to a lot of people is the iconic film Rock and Roll High School. Now, a few years back, there was talk of there being a remake of Rock and Roll High School. What is your thoughts on that movie perhaps being remade someday, and what band do you think could pull off the Ramones' role from that movie, which I would imagine would be quite difficult?
Definitely. There's only one Ramones, but the charm of the movie was that it was original, it was very cheaply made, and we had to cut corners, but sometimes that's what makes a movie great. You're at the right place at the right time. They wanted to call it Disco High and get a disco band, but the director, Alan Arkish, decided we want to use a rock or a punk band, so he was a big fan of the Ramones, and then we auditioned for them, and we got the audition, and we got into the movie, and it was really, really, we were very grateful for that, because that put us onto the next plateau. But what band do I see today? I don't know. That's a good question, because we looked like cartoons. We looked like a band. We looked like we were one. I don't see many bands today looking like a group, but that's fine. People are more concerned with their music than their image, and I can understand that. But I really don't know of any other band that would look so surreal in the setting of that movie, of making that movie, than the Ramones.
The scene where the lead character in that movie lays down in her bed and lights up a cigarette, and the Ramones sing a ballad to her as she's daydreaming and taking a shower and stuff, I still think is one of the best scenes in the history of cinema.
Thanks.
Well, that's Marky Ramone joining us here on the Metro South Morning Show here on WXBR. We'll remind the folks listening that Marky Ramone's Blitzkrieg performs with Andrew WK this Friday night at the Paradise Rock Club in Boston. Marky, thank you so much for joining us on the program today. Any final words for our listeners before we let you go? What can we expect this Friday night? Give us a rundown of some of the Ramone songs that are part of your set list.
Well, you can reach me at MarkyRamone.com and Marky Ramone Official Facebook, and I'm on Twitter. So I know all the technical stuff out there. We're going to do 35 classic Ramone songs, in your face, no stopping, unbelievable energy, and the band really is extremely professional. So I just want to have a good time with everybody, and you won't be disappointed.
Well, that's Marky Ramone joining us here on WXBR. We're going to step aside for a quick break. Mike Pava joins us with the local news update. Stay with us here on the Metro South Morning Show.